yeah, this will be a little different this time. This will feel probably a little bit more like a book club in that we will do more group discussion, although we do have a special guest to join us for the discussion that I think brings a unique perspective, both to the movie and just to our general background. But so this is going to be a little bit different. Does anybody have a dessert? Now I noticed the Altmans aren't here, but is anyone enjoying a dessert tonight that's hopefully very cold or not? Anyone at all? No ice cream.
No dessert.
What do you have, Shelley?
I have cherries.
Oh, cherries. Oh, good.
They're chilled. They're not very cold, but they're chilled.
Yeah, I failed to get my, so, okay, well, that's fine. So as you know, we just had to kind of substitute with this movie, Black, White, and Us. And we actually have, I think, 3 regular boot camp participants who have done either interracial or international adoptions. Unfortunately, they're all sort of traveling or busy with other things. Oh, here comes Jean. Let her in.
I think Chris has a comment.
Oh, Chris, go ahead.
We are in that category.
Oh, you good. I'm glad to hear that. So we will definitely want to get your story and hear all about that. We just love to hear what everybody thought of the movie. And for me, it was, I call it a 3 hanky because it was just really emotional for me. But I watched it twice. I was just weeping at the end. But I've invited an old friend who may be known to some of you if you've been around Lawrence for any period of time, and especially if you had kids who went to Hillcrest Elementary School or played softball, right, Sandra? Because you were a very busy umpire. Is that, you can unmute yourself. There you go. Yeah, this is Sandra Walker. And Sandra Walker was, for as long as I can remember, since we moved to town in '88. Were you at Hillcrest in '88?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought so.
I was there from 1981 to 2011.
Yeah, so that would have been our entire tenure there.
Yep.
Sandra was, or I always called her Miss Walker, and I know I'll slip into that tonight, but was our PE teacher and beloved. And when I say that, people throw that word around, but she was beloved by all and was in a, I think a very unique position at Hillcrest in that back in the day, that period of time, Hillcrest was kind of the hub for all the ESL kids. So the children of international KU students, grad students and whatnot, all went there if they lived within that boundary. And then we also had all the special, or most of the special ed kids, because we had a ADA compliant special wing that was built onto the school. And this was, I think when we were still there, they started, quote unquote, mainstreaming. I remember that being a very big deal. But for a while anyway, we had the most diverse population of any school I could think of, really. And it was so fortunate for us in the neighborhood to have our kids experience this little United Nations of children. And Sandra knew everybody's name and could pronounce them properly. Always had a smile walking down the hallway, and everybody just really adored her. And I'm happy that she's here because she happens to live in Salt Lake City now. And I'm going to let you tell the story of, you went there for love, and I'm going to ask you about, your perceptions of the place, but I thought it would be fun to have her on and just kind of give us her perspective of being kind of a Midwest transplant. Did you grow up in like the St. Louis area, as I recall?
Yeah, St. Louis and Kansas. Yep. Yeah.
So how did you find your way to Salt Lake City, and once you got there, what were your impressions?
Well, I had I started dating Margaret online, and we had a long distance relationship for 2.5 years. And I had come out to visit a few times. And, you notice right away, especially, when you come from different parts of Lawrence. I mean, if you go into Lawrence some days, it's all white too. But
Oh, sure. Yeah.
the Mormon thing, I had gotten a little taste of it coming to visit. But then when you live here and you walk around, you go down, you got to go down Temple Square and stare and look and do stuff like that. But the thing that I noticed is everybody is extremely very nice, very accepting, loving on the outside. And then unless you are doing things where you'll notice the things, but the one thing you notice is that it's really, really a lot of white people. And more so than any place I've ever been, other than, I don't know. And then you see it, you make this connection with other brown people. And it doesn't matter where they're from, whether they're Latino or African or what. You just you see somebody. I saw this young man in the store one time, and we were walking down the aisle at Smith's, which is Kroger, and we saw each other. We both kind of like, "Hi, how are you?" Because it had been like 3-4 weeks since I'd seen anybody brown that was walking that would I could talk to. And so you do those little recognitions. Now, one of the things I noticed in that movie, and it is very true, you're expected to have children when you get married. And if you can't, then you better find a way to do it. And that was one of the things that I noticed in that movie. That's very true. Margaret's family is, most of her siblings, or all of her siblings are Mormon, and all of them have 5 kids. And we kind of were joking last week at a reunion she had. I was talking to one of her nephews, and we were just making, I said, "Yeah, isn't it 5 the number?" He said, "Yeah," because we went around the room just in their family reunion. Almost every single person there had 5 or 6 kids, period. There wasn't anybody, there was somebody who had 3, and we kind of snickered and said, "Yeah, but she's pregnant, so there's number 4 coming." And so, it's really interesting. And then learning about the church, I had to I'm a history person, so I go read all the signs that this is the place. Everybody should come to Salt Lake just to see really how it started. And she does have ancestors that were the hand cart people that came. She does, her great grandmother was one of so there's some history there. But yeah, it's just been, it's interesting. I haven't done a lot. As soon as I was getting ready to get involved in the school system and volunteer and do stuff, COVID hit. And so I haven't had a chance to get out and, because I've always been one of those kind of people. If you don't want me in the room, I'm coming in. And I probably will be that way even if I go to heaven. I'm wherever I go. But I've always been one of those. And so, but the one thing that I've noticed too with the Black population here, it's mostly African, and they're brought in to save from their plight in their countries. And that's a big, the missionaries, when they go, and they'll go to Mexico or they'll go to Europe or wherever they go, it's always someplace where people are oppressed or poor or in need. I've never heard of a Mormon mission in London or Beirut. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of but it's a good thing too. I mean, there's 2 sides to that. It's like, they have enough money that they can go out and bring all these people in, but by George, thank the Lord for them, because they have saved a lot of lives, and they have made a lot of lives better. So that's one of the things that I've noticed too, is they're very, very kind people, very, it's like everybody is, but
Yeah.
and I'm not a member of a church, of the Mormon church, but I've been in one. The temples open up pretty soon when they're done with all the remodeling. And, I guess they open up for 6 to 9 months. when they build them or remodel them, so you can go in and see all of the ornate, then they lock the doors and you have to be, a saved Mormon to be able to go in.
Ah, interesting. Well, and to have that experience when you first got there, to go and, when your eyes light up because you see somebody with skin color similar to yours, and then you think about those children in the film who had the same experience, and, that one child, I can't remember which couple now he or she belonged to, but said, Mommy, I feel comfortable here, because there was a second brown or third brown person in the room. If you as a retired adult are having those same feelings, imagine what that means to a kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I will have more to ask you about Utah. I did look up some stats because they kept talking about how lily white it was out there, and I wondered, well, just how lily white is it, and how does it compare to Kansas? And so I looked up some population statistics just out of curiosity. And so in the whole country, as of 2019, and I'm going to say Black/African American because I think they do count Hispanic Blacks in this number, but 14% of the population in the country falls in that category. I will just say Black. In Utah, in the state, it's 1.5.
That high.
In Salt Lake City, it's 2.6. So I wondered about us because, like you said, you can go to Dillon's in Lawrence out west and it's pretty white out there, but Lawrence is 5% and Kansas as a state is 6.1%. So not a lot bigger, but that certainly would make a difference in the population. Yeah. Well, I'm interested, Chris, since you offered, will you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. We had one biological boy, so he's white. And 2 years later, my wife had a miscarriage and then was told that she was unlikely to get pregnant again. So we were both close to 40 years old and decided that we would look for an adoption. Some of you know that I'm a physician. One of my colleagues at the hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was an obstetrician. And he said, well, I'll look out for anybody who may be wanting to give up their baby. So it was only about 3 months later that my wife got a call from this doctor, and he said, there may be a baby that you want to look at. And he didn't say anything about the color. And so I was at work, took some time off and go up to the neonatal ICU. And there was this beautiful little black girl. She was about 5 days old. She was on oxygen and had a little bit of jaundice and was being treated. That all recovered fine. And we said, sure. And we had some psychologist friends that we ran things by. And a lot of things from the movie brought up memories. And we thought, well, we'll be fine because we've got lots of black friends. You don't learn that much by having black friends, right, Sandra? Unless you live the life and walk the walk. So we felt reassured and we applied for the adoption. And to cut the story a little short, yeah, and at about 10 weeks old, she came to live with us. And the adoption went through the paperwork about a year later in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So Catherine is now 37 years old, has her own baby. She has married a Kickapoo native, lives near Seneca. Her baby is as white as you could imagine. Catherine's mom was Anglo in New Mexico, and her father, we were told, was an African athlete at the University of New Mexico. Since 23andMe and other genetic services have come to the fore. Catherine decided to investigate, and she has traced her father to an actual African American who lives in California, and she's communicated with him and his family, as have Suzanne and I. Very amicable. So what problems have we had over the years? Catherine, as she grew up, had a lot of identity issues, and this is a phrase that I'm sure Sandra has heard, she was considered an Oreo cookie, black on the outside, but white on the inside because of how she was grown up. Yes, we're privileged. She had a good education. She went to a private school in Kansas City, and also some time at a public elementary school, middle school. She's had some psychological problems with her identity being in a white mix. However, she gets on very well both with Black and white people. So over the years, we have certainly experienced some reverse discrimination. In other words, being not well looked upon by some African-American adults that we have known, thinking what is the meaning of you looking after a Black child? I don't know if any of you remember back in the 1980s, she was born in 85. So the late 80s, there was a lot of stuff going on from the African-American social workers, if that's the right organization, actually voicing that. And I think it was mentioned in the movie.
It was, yeah.
That it was wrong to have a mixed race interracial adoption. So we battled through that a few times. The most encouraging thing in that regard was that we joined an organization called Jack and Jill, which is, I would say, maybe Sandra can correct me if I'm wrong, I would say more middle-class African-American parents who gather socially and do things with their children. And so, yeah, it was quite interesting often to be the only white parents with a Black child amongst a lot of very pleasant and helpful mothers and fathers and their own kids running around and having fun and socializing. So that was good for us.
Interracial group.
I did want to say too, just to clarify that Sandra is here not as an expert on interracial adoption. She doesn't know much about it, nothing. I mean, she's here to speak to the experience of, living amongst Mormons and in Salt Lake City and that experience. I just as a point of clarification. Well, I appreciate your story, and I think that was. I was struck by the way the movie opened when all of these parents, these sets of parents, were just right off the bat talking about how naive they were and how surprised at their own naivete they became. Like it was almost like, we can't believe how naive we were. What we didn't know, sort of, and it was, did you find yourself in the same situation, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though I had African-American partners in my medical group and would talk a lot with them, you don't know the experience that the Black people have. I mean, two times one of my partners was pulled over on the freeway going to work.
Yeah.
And it just, the racial profiling. Well, so you had to teach our child that, what to expect. So yeah, lots of things we didn't know, lots of things we're still learning.
Sure. And if anybody else wants to share their experiences too, or if you want to just open up and unmute your mic, if you have something to say at this point, feel free. Sandra, I want to go back to the pressure of, this idea that if you're married, you've got to have children. And that's something that you've noticed right away. Kathleen and I were talking about, especially about sort of the adoption business there, and how, the reason they have so many adoption agencies is because there is this need for it. I mean, in terms of people feeling obligated or motivated or whatever by their religion to have all these children. And that's why their tentacles, go so far out into the country as they try to find babies to adopt, to the point where one of their clients had given birth like 11 times or something, and they had adopted out 6 of her children. Shelley, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to type it in. I had thought it was like illegal to price children for adoption, dependent on their skin color. Am I hopelessly naive about that, or is that something that's only around here, or is it? I don't know where I got the notion. I just thought it was.
I don't, if anyone knows, please offer it up, but Kathleen and I were talking about this
that
too,
was
is in that our whole
surprising.
experience growing up Catholic in Kansas City,
Mhm.
the only experiences I heard about secondhand were all through Catholic services.
Right.
I mean, you just didn't even hear about private adoption agencies when we were growing up, or even when we were young adults. I didn't anyway. So I don't really have. Scott?
Oh.
You might be muted, Scott.
We can't hear you. Not working.
Push a little bit.
How about that?
There you
There,
go.
that's better.
A little better? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's your earphones.
Well, that's good. Well, it's probably better that you couldn't hear me, but my information is dated, but it was when I was in the 80s, I was counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee back in Washington, and we ended up having an adoption scam, that long story that we ended up with. But we got into private adoptions quite a bit, trying to get a handle on it. And in the 80s, at least, there was a big issue that had differed greatly from state to state. And the whole, what was selling a baby and what was paying for the services of the mother left a lot of room for maneuverability. Our particular scam or situation involved mothers in Mexico offering their children up, and there were people in various states, Iowa was the main one, who would bring them in or not bring them in. It really was a sordid affair. But what we did find was that we introduced federal legislation that I think we got passed, but I really didn't do much to try to bring a federal motion. People could bring action in federal courts because the state laws were so different, and you could sell babies, but what was selling a baby was paying the expenses of the mother for, depending on how you looked at it. And I was surprised to hear the woman say, "Oh, we give a discount for because that happened, but usually they weren't so stupid as to acknowledge it." So anyway, that's dated, but I don't have no reason to believe that there's become a Uniform Adoption Act that I'm aware of that really fills in that gap. So in Utah, where there's such an interest in getting those children, I think they'd be hesitant to put much in the realm of restrictions on that. So I don't know if that was helpful, other than the fact it's just a real weird collection of state laws that you have to comply with.
Scott, wasn't there some scandal about Guatemalan women saying that they felt that some of their children were kidnapped so
Right.
they could be marketed? And this woman said very specifically, they have race-based pricing, but I was assuming that because it was a private agency that perhaps anything goes. By the way, Jack and Jill is famous as a very elite Black organization, not middle class.
Yeah.
It's real famous for its elite status.
Okay. I want to, just for a fun aside, Scott Morgan was on the Donahue show about this very case.
I was, yeah.
Spilled the
And,
beans,
We
sorry.
tried so hard to find it on YouTube today, but
Yeah.
alas,
God
it
loves
The
the
basement,
80s.
got it.
1984,
Yeah.
and the producers were amazed that because you look so young that
I
you
did.
could come in and be an expert on Phil Donahue. That's what I heard.
I had a grown-up voice with a little boy's body, and I got
About 12.
I got flown in, and they picked me up at the airport, and that was fine. But then I went into the green room. It was live at that time in Chicago, and it was taped for around the country. But the producer walks in and goes, "Hey, it just was this audible, oh my God," which really helped my confidence level. But
Sure, yeah,
it worked out
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, well, Donahue was a big deal. So
Yeah, he was very good, but it was very sad. And you were asking Sharon about the Guatemalan. There were several countries, and that was what was happening in Mexico, is the women were saying their children were taken from them. But then there were also cases where they just never got the children. It was a real thrown together operation where they sometimes got the kids, sometimes didn't. Sometimes the mothers knew what they were doing, sometimes they didn't. And it was, especially when you got into international, it became really suspect. In America, if they were US mothers, they had much more ability to go and seek redress. But once they got into international, it was pretty wide open.
yeah.
That's all.
Well, and speaking of the business of adoption, did anyone else get a sense about the woman who led and you can open your mics up if you want, we can just freeform this, but about the woman who ran the adoption agency? I mean, I'll just say, I, for one, was just sort of in one camp completely about her at the beginning of the movie. And then when they revealed that she actually had adopted a couple of children herself, and then told that horrifying story about her fourth grader being chased by the cops at his own elementary school,
Yeah.
I had a complete change of.
I did too.
Yeah,
I felt the same way, Kathy.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I just thought the contrast between is it Leitner, the father who spoke, and her, and then the social worker. I thought that the woman providing the children was kind of ditzy, but then she certainly had a heart for the children. She got sad about the little boy who was in fourth grade, and I did the same thing. I thought, oh gosh, here I'm judging her
Yeah.
foolishly.
Well, and the promotional language that's used to talk about the movie online, like on the IMDb, talks about the adoption agencies that profit from these, adoptions. So you go into it thinking she's a scoundrel, and then she tells her personal story, and it's like, oh my God, that woman is walking the walk, and actually immersed in this experience and had an incredible story of her own. So yeah, that was how I felt completely. It's just, I didn't want to like her at first, and then it's like, oh dang, you're a good person.
Right.
It humanized her, but she's still marketed to Black birth mothers. for their
Exactly.
kids, and she
Yeah.
preyed on white Mormon
Yeah.
couples. Even I would
Yeah.
not want her to be my mother, because she had a heart, but she also talked about supply and demand, and she felt bad that innocent little boys were targeted. But then we spoke to a couple of the others, and they say, yeah, they hit 18 and they leave and they don't look back, because
Yeah.
it wasn't a good experience. And I somehow felt that she'd be maybe a good mom when they were young, but it would get very tough when they start to be adolescents. And also, she's a Mormon and she needed to have kids, and more of kids. I never felt that she was advocating for the kids. I never thought that she was giving them coping strategies. You heard from some of the others, it's called The Talk now. Ta-Nehisi Coates was talking about it. You tell your kids, you sit them down and you give them the talk and tell them, keep your hands on the dashboard and so forth and so on. But she was still not a good person, in my opinion.
I feel like she was
She
still
left-
exploitive. I kind of agree with you, Sharon, that she was still exploitive in a way. I have mixed feelings about interracial adoptions. I have 2 grandsons who are adopted and they're Hispanic. So I can't say it's always a bad thing because we love having those boys in our family. But, you know, adoption was used as a means of assimilation and genocide for the Native Americans.
That's
They
right.
would adopt Native American children to white families, and that was another technique of sort of eliminating the natives. And so there's been a lot of cases to me to where interracial adoption has not been a good thing.
It's
I
very
really-
strongly missionary based among the Mormons.
Yeah.
They, you know, when you were talking about where they go, it's saving those poor Black children.
Right,
or
it's
those,
very
children of
patronizing.
color.
Yeah, it's very patronizing, and so I have mixed feelings, and my heart goes out to some of those people that were in the movie because I felt like they were really honestly trying to do what was the very best thing for those children, and really did a lot of self-introspection with themselves. So I admired that, but I just have really mixed feelings about, you know, the interracial adoption issues.
The
I
alternative
don't think
is
that they're
is
malicious.
difficult. The alternative is difficult though, because there aren't enough Black families willing to adopt or interested in adopting, or they wouldn't go to white children.
Do we know
Or
that?
can
Do we
afford
know
it.
that for a fact?
Well,
I don't-
yeah.
I
Sandra?
don't know that for a fact, but I'm suspicious of
What
that.
happens
I
is that very
just
often
don't know if that's
grandparents
true.
step in, so it's not an official adoption, but you get within the families, Black taking care of their young. So it's not in the statistics, but I bet many of you would know a grandmother who is taking care of her grandchildren.
Mary?
We have an African-American son who, when did we adopt? In
86. He was 1 day old. Drove down to Great Bend.
Did you say 1 day old?
Yes.
1 day old, okay.
But we have a daughter, and this came, and we weren't able to have any more children. We felt like we wanted children. And I had worked with a law student at KU it was through, you know, I worked with him with music at church. That's how I got to know him. And then when he got out on his own practice, he was also working with adoptions. 7 years later, we get a call from him. Now, we hadn't been pursuing this at all. And he said, there's a baby to be born. They have tried to find Black families to take this baby, and there are none. The lawyer in this town contacted the priest here in Lawrence. The priest, this law student now happened to be working in a development capacity with this parish. And the priest mentions it, and this lawyer knows us, and he calls us. And we had very little time to decide. I guess some of our decision was on that. I have a sister and brother-in-law who adopted a biracial boy back 1969, I think it was. And there were professors, he was a professor, and they were in a college environment back east. And we had seen how that worked out. We also have a first cousin who adopted a Samoan boy. Anyway, here was his baby. So yeah, naive, right. But if we hadn't been in Lawrence, Kansas, I don't think we would have done this at all. We thought we had a pretty good network of friends here. And we have known, you know, we had African-American family friends that he was able to play with and have friends with, but this kid was friends with everybody. He went to St. John's School, so he went to Central, so he had, and Lawrence High, and we were talking with him about this week and telling him what we were going to be doing. And he said, well, what were your choices? Are you going to put me back into the system? You know, you're going to do that? And I don't know. It's really difficult. I don't know how to say this without sounding elitist. Sometimes it was hard to find African-American friends of his who we would want him to be close with, although we did, but, and it's not a money thing, you know what I mean? It's, I guess, values or something like that.
Mary, one of the
Yes.
difficulties that my husband had, who was in African-American history, and one of the difficulties was when they were recruiting people to come, a great majority of the Black candidates said there is no strong middle class,
Right.
Black community in Lawrence, Kansas. A lot of it, you know, as Will Chamberlain said, Kansas, it's a good place to come from. You know, it wasn't all that friendly. And so you do have working class Black people. There are a number of faculty whom we know, but again and again, people would turn down when they were trying to recruit and said, there just is no strong middle-class family. And I want my children to have those friends. Sandra, you laughed?
Yeah, I was going to call on Miss Walker. How long did you live here?
Evelyn said, oh, I lived there for 40 years.
Yeah, I thought so.
But-
So you knew.
Right, but I was raised Black, and I came from a Black family, and the one thing that I know, then I can only speak for myself and the people that I've talked to about this, it doesn't matter where you go, it's the same thing. You know, I can go to Chicago, I can go to Seneca, Kansas. Lord have mercy, there'd be one of me walking down the street. I can go to Kansas City. I can go to Denver. It depends on where you live and how you are and how you meet your situation. Yes, I've been profiled in Lawrence, Kansas, because you see my haircut. What's the word? Socially, my haircut looks like a man's because Black men, you know, all wear their hair like this. So I've been racially profiled in Lawrence. I got pulled over once they realized who I was and what I was. And that, you know, and it still happens. It still happens. You have Black police officers who've left Lawrence Police Department because they were racially bothered. Look at that list. I mean, I had 3 of my students and they're gone.
That's right.
And, you know, one of the biggest things I thought, and it was before I retired, I couldn't believe that Lawrence had a Black police chief, a Black fire chief, and something else, and a Black superintendent, all in the same year, in the same town. And I'm just like, what is going on? And those are 3 different organizations, and these are all Black men, not one Black woman. And so, you know, and the advantage I had teaching at all the schools that I taught, I talked to people, kids and parents, and, you know, there's still crap going on in Lawrence Public Schools in Lawrence, Kansas. There always will be, that until something happens to make people realize that deep down we really are the same, and we do have more in common than we don't. But one of the things that I've always taught my kids, all, not my personal, because I chose not to have some because I didn't want to come home to them, was do the best you can with what you've got, because it's all you've got. And you need to learn how to get along with everyone, even those people who are calling you a nigger, even those people that are calling you a kike. I mean, there's this, we talked about that. And I remember a teacher getting mad at me when I said, well, you can't use those words. I said, I didn't use the whole class. That kid asked me a question and I answered it. And I helped the kid find an answer to the question. I'm not going to ever lie to a child, but I will certainly teach children how to get along with people, which is some of the adults that once they reach a certain age, I don't know, they just forget that that's part of living. But one thing that I know, and that's not from Salt Lake, from Lawrence, is you just are careful. And if there's not anything, and I don't live there anymore right now, but I lived there for 40 plus years. And I was a teacher and I had 20,000 kids and parents. And I just know that the color of your skin there matters. Each high school, wasn't it, what, 3 years ago, we had the N-word mowed into or painted onto the football field at Lawrence High, and they caught the kids from Free State doing it. That was just recent. Yeah. So you don't come out of the womb with hate. You are taught to hate. And there are some people who teach it very well. And it's not always the parents, but it's you the only one that had the kid in the house who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. Don't be blaming it on his classmates. You know, I mean, it's like, wake up, be honest. And the one thing I appreciated with that film was the parents finally looked inside themselves and said, oh my gosh, was I like that? And that's what that courageous conversation is. It's looking within. And it doesn't, we can't do it. All the Black folks on the planet are not going to make all the white folks on the planet like us. It ain't happening. It's got to come from. And one of the things that I teach, and I still, when I was doing some of the things, is like, look at your circle of friends. If everybody in your circle of friends looks like you have a lot of work to do. Who do you hang out with? Who do you go out to dinner with? Look at your church. I mean, last year during all this stuff going on, I think it's on YouTube or Netflix or something, and everybody should look at this one. It's something about it's called The Black Church, and how it began and what it's done over the past 200 or 300 years. And, you know, you're talking about trying to get natives. They blew up more Black churches and they burned more Black churches in the 1800s and the 1900s. They tore up Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black folks in there making money, being millionaires. Oh, we can't have that. I mean, it just goes on, and you get so sick and tired of it. It's like, can I just wake up today and just be a human being? You know, you can't.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me, well, two things. When Curtis Linton, who's the pastor that was kind of dominated the show, I thought, and his wife didn't speak much, which I wanted to talk about, but
I was wondering if he was related to my son.
He had asked a friend of his, who I believe was African-American, what can I do? How to improve myself and to sort of open my mind? And he really was getting motivated to do something. He's the one that started these camps, which they talk about at the end. And his friend said, believe me.
Yep.
And that really, I think that was probably the most powerful line in the whole film, was just, believe me when I tell you this is the experience.
And that's the biggest thing, is why would I make this up?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? And all of us in our, you know, we started doing equity work in Lawrence in 2008. I was in the first group that did it with the Courageous Conversation, which what's his face's thing. And it was just like, people, well, he didn't. I said, how do you know? You don't know what that person had in their heart when they said, doesn't matter what's in their heart. They said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that one thing. I really like that. That's because that is it, believe me. And you get tired of it. And that
Yeah.
talk, my parents had that talk with my brother.
Oh, yeah.
He has 4 sons and he's had that talk. And it was kind of, I appreciated how those parents grew. And if each one of us tells one person, tells 10 people, and those 10 people tell 10 people, you would, in less than a week, we could have story after story after story being spread all over the community of Lawrence.
Yeah. And
In
that's
those
also what he
communities.
said. He also said that these parents, these interracial adopting parents, are the ones to lead the fight because they know and they've done the work.
Sandra, I wanted to ask you, in your working with children in PE, I know that there are children who like to bully. How did you deal with some of those children in 4th and 5th grade and 6th grade? Were you able to get through to them that they needed to be kinder?
Usually, it took time. It didn't happen, and I have to be honest with you, as my teaching career went on, I'm a much better teacher now than I was when I first started, and learned a lot and started thinking a lot and talking to the kids and talking to counselors about how do kids, and you get into like each individual kid. So if I have 30 kids, I don't talk to them all the same. And I think that was one of the advantages that I had as a teacher, was I was like that even when I started. It's like each kid meant something different, and I didn't put them all in one group and talk to the whole group. I take a person or a kid, and so the bully has a reason why they're acting like that. Instead of just like, don't do that. What do you do when a parent tells you don't to do that? You go do it twice.
Right.
And I'd find out, well, honey, what's the matter? Why are you acting like this? And you find out from them what's the matter. And that's how you deal with bullies, and I think the best thing that happened, and I'm not, with COVID, I was so happy for those kids who had been bullied every day of their lives. When school closed, there was 1 million kids that were waking up feeling safe from those bullies. And that was, and I also worried about the bullies because they didn't have any place to take out, what was happening to them in their homes. So it was it's a double-edged sword. But, bullies are they're just misguided. I think out of all the kids I had, I could really say, and I'm thinking of them, that there were 4 or 5 kids that were just bad, just sociopath. And nobody was going to reach them, and 2 of them are dead. So.
Well, I remember the older teen, I don't know if he's even teen, that we don't know who his parents were. But he was, they called it the 2 boys he was with said that monkey pays for himself or something like that. He shouldn't have been spending time with those boys. I mean, those 2 boys needed to be educated or something. I don't know. It's just.
Well, kids are mean, and they will say what they know will get a reaction. They may have never said that to him before. I mean, most people, the people that I know aren't gonna hang around you if you keep calling them names, especially.
That's a good point.
But so then that social, you know how boys are. I don't want to get into that, but high school
That's another
boys,
movie.
Yeah, high school boys, high school girls, middle school boys, middle school girls, all those kids have needs, and they'll see a moment and they'll take it. And it's important that if you're around and you hear it, you need to seize the moment and, hey, where's this coming from? And if it truly was, you've offended me, you've hurt my feelings, and we're done. Well, I didn't mean nothing, but if I hear that one more time, I didn't mean nothing, but yeah, you did. I like the thing too, the parents said that the family they also started looking at all the oppressed people. They
Yeah.
start looking at LGBTQ, and I'm like, LGBTQ, brown, women, you know, and I've chosen 3 of those things to be oppressed. I'm a Black woman, gay woman. So, you know, my middle name is oppressed. So you learn how to deal with that. And so that was really cool because those, whoever, and I don't know, but I'll find out in the next week or so. If they all live here in Salt Lake, I know the Linton guy does.
Yeah, I bet he's you need to work at that camp.
Yeah, I'm gonna visit and find out. Give me a little a mission out there Friday afternoon.
Absolutely. You call them up and say, we did this, and you've got to work at that camp. Well, you know, and I think it's a great point in that that you make, in that Salt Lake City or Utah is really no different than any place when it comes to prejudice and racist behaviors and all of it, that experience. I did wonder though, when you went to move out there, how much did you know about, I mean, Margaret's a Mormon, of course, and she grew up, yeah. So did you, I don't want to say vet the community, but did you have any qualms whatsoever?
No.
No. Okay.
No, because, well, Kathy, I mean, I'm the kind of person that, like, I love everybody and I would be nice to everybody. I may not talk to you again, but I'm gonna, you know, I was raised to be respectful, and I will always be respectful. I have only, you know, and I don't go around looking for racism, but sometimes it slaps you in the face. And yeah, it slapped me in the face a few times here, but it slapped me in the face more times in Lawrence, and because I lived there longer.
So yeah, and it wasn't, I wanted just to talk to you about one scene in the movie before it gets too late, but it wasn't about, I mean, obviously those things that happen in high school with the Klan costumes and the N-words and all, yeah, I know. But those obviously can happen anywhere. It was the grocery store scene that for me, when the man who was the Curtis Linton was there with his kids, and she was picking out her birthday cake candles, and the older woman came up and just kept insisting. She said, "Is it your daughter?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Wrong." And she kept saying wrong. And that was such a dramatic scene. And he just kept saying, "I love you, I love you." It was the only way he could think of to fight back was to just hug his daughter and keep repeating that he loved her, while this woman kept repeating wrong, wrong, wrong. And the second time I watched that, I thought of you and Margaret, like, you know, that confrontation of someone feeling so strongly to just challenge you or challenge any kind of interracial relationship.
Kathy, did you feel, or did any of you feel uncomfortable that the subject were Mormons? The man who made the film, I think his wife is a Mormon. I don't know if he is.
Kathleen knows about him. Kathleen, do you want to tell the background and about his mom, the filmmaker?
Yeah. The writer and director of the film is Loki Mulholland, and his mother is Joan Trumpauer Mulholland. And she actually came to the library in 2017. She was one of the original Freedom Writers. And if you remember that famous photograph from the Woolworth lunch counter where, you know, they're getting stuff dumped on their heads, she was the white woman in that photo.
Okay.
Yeah. And she actually is really good friends with the woman that runs the Eudora Public Library, Carol Wolford. And they met in Washington, D.C. because Carol's husband was working for Bob Dole at the time, and they lived in Virginia, and their kids were in the same preschool. So she said, I met this woman who is this, you know, incredible figure from the civil rights era. I mean, she spent time in Parchman Prison in Mississippi and just was incredibly courageous. And she goes, yet she was just another preschool mom. And that's how she got to know her. So she was coming out to visit Carol, and Carol arranged for a program at the library, and Barbara Ballard interviewed her and to talk about her experiences. And she's a an incredible person. She's just a force. Just kind of exudes this amazing, I don't know, aura about her. But her son has started the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation, and the purpose is to fight racism. But I actually had his email, and I tried to contact him, and it bounced back because he apparently has about 5 different emails, and that one wasn't working.
He's done other films too.
Yeah,
A couple of others we'll have to look into.
Oh, yeah, a lot of social justice oriented films, but his mother is amazing. It was a really kind of standing room only program in the auditorium on a Saturday morning.
And I think he's Mormon too. I think not only is his wife Mormon, but he's also Mormon or LDS. But Sandra, I told you I would let you go at 8 o'clock. Well, 7 your time. It's now 7 your time. I know you have to scoot. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on. So good to see you.
Yay.
Miss Walker. Oh my gosh. Just great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Do you still have the UMC license plate on your car?
No, I still have it hanging in my garage.
Oh, good.
But I didn't think of putting that on my Honda. But now that I have another SUV, I'm thinking about getting that because I'll be moving. We'll be moving back to Kansas. So we're not going to stay here forever.
Oh, you think? Oh, good.
Sandra,
Yeah. So
Maggie Smith says hi.
yeah, I saw that. Hi, Maggie. I saw that.
Where'd
It's good
Maggie
to
go?
see
There
you.
she
She's
is.
in the
Okay.
shadows.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, go ahead.
But it's been nice to see all of you. Some of you I know and recognize, and I sent a message. I couldn't see Maggie sitting down there, but yeah, this has just been. Thank you for asking me, and I can share, and I'll share anything anytime. But I will get back with you, Kathy, and let you know what I find out from
Okay.
that the people in that film, because that's going to give me something to do, and I kind of know. I mean, I know my stuff around here. So I'll do some checking and seeing. And one final thing to share with you about and this is from Margaret. She lived here all her life, so she's the same age. So for 63 years, she's watched the community here grow and change, and it has become more and more diverse. I think the last time, maybe 20 years ago, maybe it was 70% Mormon. In the area, it's gone down to just over 50%, and so the community is changing. But it also depends on, again, where you live. If you go to Provo, Lehigh, Orem, there's just different things that happen. But it's been really, it's there. It's an interesting. When you start talking to people, especially all the ones who leave the church, it's just a really scary. Some scary things are going on, and there's nothing, you can do. I mean, we use the word church loosely, I guess, would be how to say that without saying a lot more.
Well, you're very diplomatic, and we didn't even get into the women's role, which is what you were messaging me about the other night. Just like, don't even get you started on that. But
no,
we will save that for another time.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're welcome. I also wanted to thank so much the Cornwells and the Ellises for sharing your story too. I think that made the
thank you
conversation
Bye,
a lot.
everybody.
Oh, goodbye,
Bye.
Sandra.
Bye, Sandra.
Chris, Mary, I mean, I think that just made the conversation richer to hear your experiences. And Chris, go ahead.
Can I let Suzanne say a word here?
Sure. Hi, Suzanne. I've never met you before.
Hi. He had some of the dates wrong. Catherine was 3 days old when she went to a foster home, and I snuck in every night to take care of her from as soon as it got dark in Albuquerque at Christmas time until Chris picked me up in the morning. So we had her from 3 days old, and I experienced racism from 3 days old and on. And I want to make a correction about Jack and Jill. It is not an elite organization. It started, I believe, in the 70s in Philadelphia when women, it's an African-American women's group, and they wanted their children to have cultural experiences. And so I was invited to be part of the Jack and Jill of Johnson County. There were 34 women. I was one woman. And I could go to, I had one child miscarriage. Catherine came available. We adopted her a month later. I was pregnant. So we have 2 boys. We had a 2-year-old, a 10-month-old, and a newborn. And I could go with all 3 kids into various stores in Kansas City and not have a problem. But if I went just with Catherine, I would be tailed. It would take them forever to cash my check or to approve my credit card. I would be in grocery stores in Overland Park, and I had several men come up to me and say, "You slut." Before I decided to adopt her, we adopted her. I had to think about, could I be sexual with a Black man? Because I knew that I would get that kind of a response, and I didn't want to overreact so that our daughter would not, would have any kind of, I don't know, mixed messages or whatever. When Catherine was about 12 years old, Jack and Jill, we went to Blue Valley School District and asked if they could have diversity training. We went 3 times, and I don't have much of a filter. And on the 3rd time I said, here we are, a bunch of women coming and talking to 3 men, and you don't have a clue. And I said, I have been a Black woman for 12 years, and gave them all kinds of things. And so finally, when a white woman says that she's had some Black experiences, they go, oh, well, maybe we better do that. I've heard that Lawrence we've lived here 4 years. I've heard Lawrence is one of the racist liberal towns that you can find. I was just last week at a store. I'm not going to say the name of the store, but Chris is a member of, the loyalty program. When I was checking out, she said, "Are you part of the loyalty program?" I said, "No, but my husband is. I'll just put his number in." And she said, "Oh, give me your phone." So she signed me up. She said, "I can get you 15%. And so I said, I usually don't do that, but I let her enter it in. I got 15% off. And then just right behind me is a Black couple. And she says to them, "Are you members?" And they said no. And she doesn't say one thing. And I happened to be waiting because Chris had dropped me off, and I was waiting for him to pick me up. And she didn't say one thing to him. And I went up and I said, "Excuse me." I tampered down my filter a little bit, but I said, "Excuse me. You said that I could get 15% off if I joined. Couldn't they do the same thing?" And she goes, oh, excuse me. Yes, you can do. I mean, I was so upset. And so that's the little subtle stuff that we as white people don't get. Chris and I, Sandra mentioned Seneca. We were up in Seneca before COVID because our son-in-law worked up there, and we went to a Mexican restaurant. And I have never seen such hatred in this old couple's, the way they looked at us. It was, if they had a gun, they would have mowed us down. It was so scary. So racism happens all the time. And just because we're white, we walk down the street, it's no problem. But you walk down the street with your Black skin, and it is a problem. And we don't know that. We don't realize that. He's telling me, calm down.
I personally love people without filters. Thank you very much for sharing that. We really appreciate it. And again, I think this was a really rich conversation. And thank you for your honesty. And hope you like the movie. Did everybody like the movie? I mean, we always ask that.
I thought it was great. Very good.
Yeah. 3 hankies for me.
Yeah, it's really good. Great
Okay,
conversation.
friends. All right. Well, have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you at the next one.
All righty.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay.
Very good.
All right.
You.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, everybody.